Greg was already waiting when I got to the coffee shop, the kind with reclaimed wood tables and too many Edison bulbs. Typical Denver startup decor, but it was quiet, and that's all I needed. He looked up from his espresso and gave me that half smile, half concern, half irritation. "You're really going back to Jakarta?" I shrugged out of my coat and slid into the seat across from him. "Yeah. Contract got renewed. 6 months, maybe 8. Greg leaned in, voice low. "Nathan, your kids barely see you anymore. Rachel's holding everything down solo. You sure this isn't pushing things too far?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "Look at this." He squinted at the display and activity log from our Boulder Homes smart system. "You monitoring her gym sessions now?" "Not just that. New fitness app she didn't tell me about. Switched from Apple to a third-party tracker that spoofs location. Changed her phone lock pattern twice this month. Started tagging events as school board meetings, but they don't match up with the actual schedule." Greg sat back, eyebrows raised. "Jesus. You think she's cheating?" I gave a small, humorless laugh. "I don't know. But I've built threat models on less data." That made him wince. "Nathan, she's your wife, not a hostile actor. What are you even using to track all this?" I hesitated. Then I said it anyway. "Modified the baseline security protocol. Home Network now scrapes metadata from all smart devices. Phones, thermostats, even the smart fridge logs user profiles. She thinks I installed it after that break-in scare last year." Technically true. He stared at me like I'd grown horns. "You bugged your whole house?" "For security," I said. "And insurance. You're walking a fine ethical line, man." "I've lived my whole career on a fine line." We sat in silence for a while. Greg drummed his fingers on the tabletop. Finally, he said, "Just don't lose your family over a contract, Nathan. Or worse, by trying to win back control with tech. They're people, not code." I nodded, but I didn't really agree. Later that night, back in Boulder, I was folding shirts into my travel bag when Rachel came in. Her arms were crossed before she even spoke. "You're leaving again?" It wasn't a question. "Contract came through," I said, carefully folding a dress shirt. "It's important." She leaned against the doorframe, tired but tense. "Adam's robotics championship is in 3 weeks. Lena has 2 back-to-back recitals. Do you even know the dates?" "I'll be back before the championship." "You said that last time." I zipped the suitcase shut and looked up at her. "I'm doing this for us. You know that." "Do I?" There was a beat of silence. She sighed. "You used to tell me everything. Now you're always locked in some protocol or buried in some project." I barely recognized the man I married. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "The world isn't what it used to be, Rachel. You know what I deal with. I need to stay ahead. To protect you. All of you." She looked at me like I'd missed the point entirely. "We don't need a fortress, Nathan. We need a husband. A dad." I didn't have an answer for that. I kissed her forehead, grabbed my bag, and walked out. She didn't say goodbye. Neither did the kids. But I checked the home logs from the airport. Lena's phone connected to the Wi-Fi at 8:32 p.m. Adam turned on the garage light at 9:03. Rachel didn't leave the house all night. I told myself that meant everything was fine. That the system was working. That they were safe. I told myself a lot of things. I met Rachel at a fundraiser for local clean energy projects. She wore a silver cuff bracelet and a black dress that knew exactly where to cling and where to let go. I was standing near the silent auction table, sipping a gin cocktail and making small talk with a hedge fund guy from Aspen. She was alone, staring too long at a framed photograph of solar panels over red clay rooftops. "You thinking of bidding?" I asked. She glanced at me. "Not unless it comes with the house underneath." I laughed. It wasn't the joke. It was the edge behind it. People like Rachel didn't show up to fundraisers unless they were lonely or looking for something. Sometimes both. I introduced myself. Miles Granger. She didn't give her last name right away. It took 3 brunches and 2 gallery visits before she said it. Rourke. Married. 2 kids. Husband abroad most of the year. I didn't press her then. I just listened. That was all it took. By the 6th brunch, she was venting. "Everything's a system with Nathan. Even our marriage. He schedules phone calls like meetings. I feel like a shared drive." I offered a sympathetic smile and ordered her another cappuccino. She leaned closer. I knew I had her. When we finally crossed the line, it wasn't dramatic. A kiss after too much wine. The slow slide of her hand under the table. The text the next morning, "We need to talk. For real this time." She never cried. Never said she was sorry. Rachel Rourke was not a woman who asked for permission. Once she made the decision, it became a strategy. That's when things shifted. She told me about Nathan's accounts first, casually, like mentioning the weather. A comment about how his salary didn't match the house they lived in or the trust fund paperwork she'd found while looking for their marriage certificate. I listened. I always listened. Then I got curious. I called in a favor with a friend in estate law. Pulled public records. Traced shell companies registered under aliases. Silent stakes in biotech startups. Tech patents. Overseas tax havens. Nathan Rourke wasn't just a cybersecurity architect. He was a phantom empire with a wedding ring. He trusts me with power of attorney, she said one night, from when he was working defense contracts, in case something ever happened. Then something just did, I replied. Started slow. Rachel had access to his domestic holdings through joint accounts. A slow siphon to a new LLC I helped her form. Precursor Ventures. Neutral sounding. Clean. We moved the family home into it via a quitclaim deed. Nathan never noticed. Or maybe he did. But from Jakarta, what could he do? We sold the house to a shell buyer I arranged. College kid from Boulder who thought it was all above board. Rachel pocketed the funds through a Cayman joint account we opened 6 weeks prior. Adam didn't take it well. He's not even gone 2 months and you're already packing up our lives? He shouted. Rachel didn't flinch. This isn't working. He made his choice. Adam packed his bags and went to live with Greg. Told Rachel he wouldn't be a part of this. Lena was easier. She loved Miami. The house we found had a pool and a view of the bay. Rachel made it sound like an adventure. Lena was 14, wide-eyed, and desperate to believe the adults knew what they were doing. Rachel filed for separation under emotional neglect. Played the victim card to perfection. The petition was clean, no mention of Miles. Just bullet points about absentee parenting and the psychological toll of being a married single mother. By the time Nathan's plane touched down again in Jakarta, the estate was liquidated, the assets restructured, and the kids divided like terms in a settlement. Rachel leaned against the balcony railing that night, looking out over the Miami skyline. He'll find out eventually, she said. I handed her a glass of wine. Let him. She took a sip, then added, It's not about hurting him. No, I said, watching her profile in the dim light. It's about winning. She didn't correct me. She didn't have to. The Jakarta skyline was a jagged silhouette behind mirrored glass. From the 37th floor of the Sapphire building, the city looked orderly, tamed. Below it was chaos. Traffic surged like blood through clogged arteries, horns blaring, scooters weaving through 6 lanes of steel. But my eyes weren't on the streets. I was staring at a server log on a secure terminal, decoding a benign signal tucked inside a health monitoring update. Nothing malicious, just noise pretending to be signal. Still, my mind wasn't on the code. Greg's message had come in half an hour ago through a side-channel we'd set up years back. Encrypted end-to-end, scrubbed on delivery. Adam resisting. Lena's with them. Divorce filed. You've been gutted. I read it twice, 3 times. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, then dropped. There was no need to decrypt further. The damage was clear. That's when Mina walked in. She was in field ops gear, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. She leaned against the doorway like she had time to waste. You gonna talk about it or just keep staring at the screen? I didn't respond. She walked closer, arms crossed. Let me guess. Greg told you Rachel took the house, filed for divorce, and split the kids. Sound about right. I looked up. How much do you know? I know Greg's worried about you. I know I've never seen you mess up a personal op this badly. And I know you're still pretending this isn't personal. I stood. It's not about revenge. It's about proof. Right? She said. You're just passively compiling data while your life burns down. Very rational. I walked over to the secure cabinet and keyed in my code. Pulled out a tablet. Swiped through the logs. They've been building this for months. Coordinated asset transfers. IP hits on legacy vaults. Communications through anonymized VPNs. Sloppy, but not untraceable. Mina raised an eyebrow. You're logging her. Logging everything, I said. She exhaled. So you're just gonna let it play out. Let them think they've won. I need airtight evidence. Anything premature and I lose leverage in court. Worse, I look like the paranoid husband with too many toys. She sat on the edge of the desk. And Adam? He's safe. With Greg. And Lena? I hesitated. She went with Rachel. Voluntarily. Maybe. Or maybe she didn't know enough to choose. I looked at her, tired. She's a kid. Kids believe what they're told. Mina was quiet for a beat. Then, you want me to dig on Miles? My fingers froze on the tablet. Yes, I said quietly. Start international compliance databases. Offshore registration aliases. Past litigation, if any. She nodded. You think this guy's the architect? No, I said. I am. He's just using the blueprints I left behind. Mina gave me a look I couldn't quite read. You sure you want to go this far? This far. I repeated, turning the tablet toward her. On the screen were call logs, financial transfers, tagged IPs from hotel Wi-Fi. This is me being polite. She stood. All right. I'll run a trace. Quietly. Thank you. She reached the door, paused. Nathan? I looked up. You're not building a case anymore, she said. You're preparing for war. And then she was gone. The tablet dimmed in my hand. I set it down gently. Walked over to the window. Outside, Jakarta pulsed and blinked like some massive neural network. Thousands of lives living in noisy parallel. And somewhere across the world, my own life was unraveling in silence. But that was fine. I'd already started writing the countercode. The Uber dropped me off on a quiet residential street just before sunset. From a distance, the house looked the same wraparound porch, same cedar trim, same wind chimes Rachel once claimed she hated but never took down. For a moment, I thought I might knock. That maybe I could pretend to be a stranger looking for the wrong address. Instead, I rang the bell. The guy who opened the door couldn't have been older than 25. Star up hoodie. Hair too neat. Confused smile. Hey, can I help you? I gave a soft laugh and gestured vaguely. Sorry, must have grabbed the wrong pin. Used to live here, long time ago. He relaxed. No worries. Happens more than you'd think. I nodded and backed away. My eyes skimmed past him into the hallway. New art on the walls. The smell of cheap diffuser oil instead of Rachel's signature candles. No trace of my kids. Just a clean transfer of ownership like I'd never existed. That night, I arrived at Greg's cabin in the Rockies, tucked halfway between Estes Park and nowhere. The porch light was on when I pulled up. Adam opened the door before I could knock. Dad. He looked older. Hair longer, a bit of scruff. But his eyes, same sharp stare. He hugged me stiffly, then stepped back to let me in. You're late, he muttered. I had to make a stop. He shut the door behind me. I heard. Inside, the main room was cluttered with manila folders, laptops, printouts. Greg was hunched over a stack of property deeds, highlighter in hand. Hope you brought more red string, he said without looking up. I dropped my bag on the floor. Show me everything. The next hour was a blur. Transactions. Corporate paper trails. Photos of Rachel with Miles at events she once claimed she was too tired to attend. Messages from Lena's school account showing withdrawals, enrollment transfers. She used the power of attorney to file a quitclaim deed, Greg said. Moved the house to a shell company in Florida. Then sold it to another company tied to a trust in the Caymans. I nodded. Textbook obfuscation. And Miles? Mina had come through. His real name was Miles Jefferson Granger. 2 prior SEC inquiries, nothing stuck. Recently tied to multiple dissolving startups and a boutique firm specializing in luxury asset acquisition for high-net-worth clients. Translation, he flipped trust fund brats' money into other people's property. Adam dropped a USB on the table. Footage from the home surveillance server. It synced to my backup drive before the wipe. Most of it's junk, but there are some flagged clips. Rachel on the phone, coordinating sale meetings while you were gone. I picked up the USB. My name was scribbled across the plastic in Sharpie. You did good, I said. Adam didn't answer. Just walked over to the fireplace and stared at the logs. After he left the room, Greg poured 2 whiskeys and handed me one. So, he said. What now? I reached into my bag and pulled out a biometric lockbox, thick aluminum, double-sealed. The old kind, military grade. I hadn't touched it in 5 years. On the lid, a label faded to gray. Blackline Protocols. Greg raised an eyebrow. I keyed in my print and retina scan. The lid hissed open. Inside was a single USB drive, cold silver. No labels. You really made one, Greg whispered. Encrypted, partitioned, logged with metadata fingerprints and DNS crawl trails. Evidence of fraud, collusion, identity manipulation. Enough to trigger federal review if it lands in the right inbox. He exhaled. Jesus. I want Mina to handle the court motion. Quiet filing. Domestic fraud, financial conspiracy, breach of marital fiduciary duty. You're gonna represent yourself? I nodded. Who else can handle data this volatile without blowing chain of custody? Greg was quiet. Then he said, you're not just proving what they did. No. You're taking back control. I stood, pocketed the drive. Time to bring the system back online. The courthouse was colder than it needed to be. Sterile, beige, humming with the quiet sounds of shuffled papers and people pretending not to look at each other. I walked in alone. No tie. Just a dark blazer, white shirt, and the quiet weight of knowing I'd already run simulations on every possible outcome. Rachel sat across the aisle with her attorney, a sharp, pretty woman with confidence dialed up to 11. Rachel looked like she hadn't missed a beat. Fresh highlights. Manicured nails. Miles wasn't there. Of course not. The judge entered promptly at 9 a.m. Call the matter of Rourke versus Rourke. Rachel's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we're prepared to move for summary judgment based on prolonged absence and financial abandonment. My client was left with sole parental and domestic responsibilities for over 9 months, during which the respondent failed to provide adequate support or communication. The judge looked at me. Mr. Rourke, do you have representation? I stood calmly. I'll be representing myself, Your Honor. That got a blink. Rachel didn't look at me. Not once. Very well, the judge said. Let's begin. Rachel's lawyer presented a slick timeline. Documents. Email printouts showing my travel dates. Testimonies from Lena's new school enrollment that I'd been absent and uninvolved. A certified copy of the asset shift, legal on paper, morally radioactive. Then I stepped forward. I have evidence to submit. Physical and testimonial. The judge nodded. Proceed. I turned to the gallery doors. Mina walked in, dressed plainly, no makeup, hair tied back. No trace of the field operator she was in Jakarta, just another professional woman with too much intelligence in her eyes. She took the stand and spoke clearly. I'm Mina Iqbal. I'm a regional field liaison for a multinational defense contractor. I worked directly with Nathan Rourke overseas. She confirmed my deployment dates, daily security briefings, digital restrictions. She verified my limited access to U.S. systems and explained the security policies that made unauthorized monitoring or digital meddling nearly impossible. Rachel's lawyer objected. This testimony is irrelevant to the emotional abandonment claim. It's relevant, I said, because it shows I was intentionally restricted from communication, which my wife now uses as proof of neglect. The judge nodded slowly. Sustained. Continue. Then I pulled out the USB. Your Honor, I said, handing it to the clerk, this is sealed, encrypted, and includes metadata logs, financial transfer traces, GPS timelines, and communications extracted from network pings in our shared smart home. The clerk brought it to the bench. The judge inserted the drive into the courtroom system. A soft beep. I had scrubbed it for presentation, redacted just enough to be admissible, but damning enough to change the air in the room. Screens lit up with timestamps. Video stills of Rachel on the phone in the Boulder kitchen planning account transfers. Logs showing when she accessed offshore portals. Messages to Miles tucked behind VPN traces where she asked, "Can we finalize the Cayman account before he returns?" Rachel's lawyer shifted. Rachel sat still. The judge scrolled. Slower now. I didn't say a word. Eventually, the judge looked up. Counselors, chambers? Now. Everyone but Mina and I exited. Rachel didn't look back. They were gone 10 minutes. When they returned, the judge's face was hard to read, but the gavel came down like steel. All assets are hereby frozen pending investigation into potential financial misconduct and fraud. Divorce proceedings are suspended. The court is referring this matter to the District Financial Crimes Unit. Rachel's mouth opened, then shut. Her attorney didn't say a word. I sat back down, calm, steady. Rachel finally turned to look at me, and for the first time, her face held something I hadn't seen since the beginning. Fear. Mina leaned close and whispered, "That was clean." "No," I murmured back. "That was precise." And we stood up and walked out, one step ahead of the echo they left behind. Greg's cabin was quiet again, the snow melting off the roof in slow drips that tapped against the window like a ticking clock. Adam sat on the couch, scrolling through headlines on his laptop, financial blogs, court updates, whispers of a fraud case against Rachel Rourke and an unnamed co-conspirator. The internet had begun to smell blood. I was pacing near the wood stove when Adam snapped his laptop shut. "This isn't justice," he said flatly. I turned. "No?" He stood. You're dismantling her, Dad. Not just exposing her, you're torching everything. I saw her face in that courtroom. That wasn't strategy. That was fear. She earned it, I said. Every move was a betrayal. Adam's eyes didn't flinch. What about Lena? She made her choice. She was 14, he shot back. She followed Mom. What was she supposed to do? She didn't have all the facts. She still doesn't. I didn't answer right away, because he was right in part. She's still with them, I said finally. Still in their world. That means she's still part of the problem. Adam shook his head and walked off toward the kitchen. Or maybe she's the only one waiting for a signal. That night, while I reviewed Mina's latest report on Miles' Miami holdings, my phone buzzed. An encrypted message routed through the emergency channel I'd set up years ago for Lena. A backup to the backup protocol. Just in case. Lena, I don't know who to trust. Something's not right. Mom's disappearing for hours. Miles is acting weird. The house feels off. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of the tone. Then I typed, "Me, are you safe right now?" "Lena, I think so. Can't sleep. Keep hearing Miles arguing with someone on the phone." "Not Mom." "Me, you still have the necklace I gave you?" A pause. Then, "Lena, the charm with the compass?" "Yeah. I keep it on my nightstand." I smiled just a little. That charm was a beacon concealed tracker with encrypted audio uplink. I told her it was symbolic. For finding your way. She wore it through middle school without question. "Me, put it on. Keep it close. If you trust me, Lena, activate it." No reply. 5 minutes passed. 10. I didn't move. Just stared at the screen, heartbeat steady, breath shallow. Then the confirmation ping. Beacon active. Uplink engaged. A soft chime from Greg's laptop echoed seconds later. He looked up from across the room. "We got her." I walked over and tapped into the signal routing. "Triangulate." The map rendered slowly. Florida coastline. Canal networks. A dense, high-security zone in Coral Gables. Property records populated on Greg's second monitor. LLC owned by a dummy corporation registered in Belize. Same pattern Mina had traced to Miles' other holdings. The signature was unmistakable. "Luxury canal house," Greg muttered. 3 floors. Private dock. High wall perimeter. Miles Granger special. Adam walked back in and saw the map. "What is that?" "Your sister," I said, sending up a flare. His jaw clenched. "You're going after them." I turned to him. "I'm bringing her home." He didn't speak. But he didn't stop me either. And in the soft light of the cabin, surrounded by maps, code, and silence, I realized something I hadn't in weeks. Lena hadn't betrayed me. She'd just been waiting. And now, she was back in the system. Lena waited until just after sunset. Inside the Coral Gables estate, all glass and curated minimalism, she moved carefully. Quiet steps, neutral face, eyes darting when no one was looking. Rachel had disappeared upstairs 2 hours ago, phone clutched in hand, whispering about lawyers and damage control. Miles had taken a call on the dock and never come back inside. She could hear him now through the open back doors, pacing and hissing into his phone. Lena slipped outside in a swimsuit, towel over her arm, and walked toward the pool. "Just going for a swim," she called out, voice breezy. No one answered. She moved to the side gate, the one that opened onto a private walkway leading to the canal. The latch clicked open under her hand. 10 seconds later, she was gone. Out front, 2 cars idled down the block. Mina sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, headset on, eyes locked to the drone feed. Nathan stood nearby, half in shadow, listening to real-time audio from Lena's beacon, routed through a secure channel. Static cracked. Then a faint whisper. "Gates open. Back corner. Poolside. I'm clear." He didn't wait. He moved fast like muscle memory, every step measured, silent. He wore a black shirt, utility belt, and gloves. Not tactical gear. Just enough to vanish in the dark. Inside, Rachel was pouring wine, staring blankly through the kitchen window when the back door clicked. She turned. He was already in the room. No noise. No words. Just presence. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She stepped back, hand reaching instinctively toward the drawer under the kitchen island. Nathan watched her fingers touch the handle, then hesitate. She pulled it open. Inside, nothing. No Glock. Just a folded note, creased cleanly in the center. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. Prediction. Weapon retrieved at 4:17 p.m. ANR. Her knees buckled slightly. Nathan stepped forward, calm and controlled. He pulled out a small projection device from his pocket and activated it. A holographic image flickered above the countertop. A digital copy of the court's temporary restraining order and a pending criminal referral notice for financial fraud, co-conspiracy, and marital asset theft. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Rachel opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Nathan, this isn't. Don't, he said, quiet, sharp. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Mina entered first, followed by 2 officers from the local cybercrimes unit. Plainclothes, serious. They paused only to verify Rachel's identity before reading her the formal advisement. Lena appeared in the side doorway seconds later. Her wet hair clung to her neck. She looked scared but steady. Is it done? She asked. Nathan turned, met her eyes, nodded once. Rachel looked at her daughter and stepped forward. Lena, baby. This isn't what it looks like. Lena flinched. Nathan stepped between them, shielding her without a word. Mina approached Rachel. You're being taken into protective custody pending federal review. You'll be given legal counsel. I suggest you use it. Rachel looked around, at the cold glass palace, the strangers in her kitchen, the man she tried to erase. Then at her daughter, who had just betrayed her with a single signal. You planned this, she whispered. You both. Nathan tilted his head. I prepared for this. You planned it. The officers cuffed her gently. She didn't resist. Miles was nowhere to be found. By the time they let her out, the house was already under lock review. All systems had been backdoored. Greg had triggered a silent seizure order on the LLC's accounts minutes earlier. Nathan looked around once more, at the life Rachel had built from his blueprints, at the lies wrapped in silk and scented candles. Then he turned to Lena. You okay? She didn't speak, just stepped closer, hesitated, then wrapped her arms around him. I didn't know what else to do. He held her close. You did exactly what I needed. And just like that, the house behind them faded into the background. The hunt was over. The signal had been heard, and the system had just crashed. The safe house wasn't much, just a sterile holding unit in downtown Miami, used by Mina's contacts for sensitive debriefs. White walls, gray carpet, no pictures. It looked like a hotel room had mated with an interrogation cell. That was the point. Rachel sat at the long table, wrists unshackled but resting on the steel like she still felt the weight of the cuffs. Her blouse was wrinkled, her hair frayed around the edges. No makeup now. No audience. No escape. Adam and I stood on the far side of the room. Lena sat to my left, arms crossed tightly, trying to make herself smaller. I looked Rachel in the eyes. I'm not here to scream, I said. We've done enough of that. I just want the truth. One time. From you. She didn't flinch, but her mouth stayed shut. Adam stepped forward. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. Our family. Were you just waiting for the right moment to cut the cord and cash out? Rachel looked at him, and for the first time since this all began, she didn't reach for a lie. Her voice was low. I tried, she said. I really did in the beginning. I loved you both. I loved him. She glanced at me, but somewhere along the way, everything just started feeling transactional, like I was a part of your code, a node to be monitored. That's rich, I said flatly, coming from someone who siphoned half our estate into an offshore vault. She snapped her gaze back to me, because I knew I didn't matter to you unless I functioned. I wasn't your wife anymore. I was part of your system. Routine check-ins, location logs. You stopped seeing me, Nathan. You just watched. Adam slammed his fist against the table. So you destroyed everything? You dragged Lena into it? You let that asshole Miles treat her like some pawn in a game. Rachel turned to Lena, voice softer now. I didn't mean to pull you in. I thought you'd be excited. You loved the house, the pool. I wanted to give you something better. You used me, Lena said, her voice shaking. You made me think Dad didn't care. You lied. Rachel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I pulled a phone from my coat and tapped play on the audio file. Her voice filled the room. Calm, cold, recorded weeks ago in a private call with Miles. Once we move everything, Nathan's assets are leverage. Offshore accounts. IP equity. We can hold it until he breaks or disappears. Either way, we win. Rachel closed her eyes. I stopped the playback. I wasn't just a system to be maintained, I said. I was your husband, the father of your children. You could have asked for anything. I would have helped you build your own empire. But you decided to burn mine down instead. She leaned forward slightly. You left, Nathan. Every time. You were always somewhere else. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Eventually, I figured if I was going to be alone anyway, I might as well take control of it. Lena whispered. So you picked the guy with money and connections. You turned our house into a spreadsheet. Rachel met her daughter's eyes. Because you were useful. The room went still. Lena's expression shattered into something I hadn't seen in her since she was a child. Pure heartbreak. She stood up and walked to the wall, turned away from all of us. Her shoulders trembled. Adam looked at me. Some people, I said quietly, you cut out. Others, you guard closer. Learn the difference. Rachel didn't speak again. She just looked down at her hands. Maybe realizing the final transaction was done. Her influence? Gone. Her leverage? Cracked open and filed into evidence. Mina appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. Transport's ready. They'll process her by morning. Adam left first. Lena lingered, then turned to Rachel one last time. I still love the version of you I used to believe in. Rachel didn't respond. And then we left. Not to punish her. Not to make her hurt. But because the truth had been spoken. And it had set the rest of us free. 6 months later, the world was quieter. Our new home sat on the edge of a canyon just outside Santa Fe. The view was endless: a red rock, dry wind, clean air. No digital noise. No security alerts. Just space. The kind you don't appreciate until you've lived too long surrounded by traps you built yourself. The house itself was small by design. Smart, but simple. Firewall to hell. Every line of code vetted by me personally. No assistance, no third-party integrations. It wasn't for show. It was for peace. Lena was back in school. I drove her most mornings. She didn't talk much at first, just watched the sun rise over the ridgeline. But over time she started humming again. Asking about things. Teachers. Books. Normal stuff. Sometimes she even smiled. Adam had taken a gap semester to intern with Greg's firm, Cyber Law Compliance. They gave him a corner desk and more responsibility than I expected. But he rose to it. Quietly determined, just like his mother used to be. Mina came by every few weeks. Usually on official visits tied to some agency inquiry I was advising on. Sometimes she stayed for dinner. Always left before dark. She showed up last Friday with a manila envelope and a look that said more than her words did. New agency contract. Quiet work. Flexible terms. Very selective. I glanced through the offer. Non-disclosure. Unlimited jurisdiction. Untraceable payouts. No, I said, folding the letter. Mina smirked. Didn't even ask about the pay. I'm building something else. She nodded, already expecting the answer. We sat on the back porch and watched the sun slide behind the canyon. She sipped tea, I drank black coffee. That was the balance now. Bitter and calm. Later that night, Lena knocked on my study door. Can I come in? Always. She stepped in and hovered by the bookshelf. I was thinking about what you said. Back in Miami. About guarding some people closer. I nodded. Yeah. Her voice was small. Have you forgiven me? I closed my laptop and turned to face her. She looked different now. More cautious. But stronger too. Like someone who'd seen the fire and made it through with skin intact. I stood and walked to the small console safe behind the desk. Opened it. Pulled out a thin hard drive labeled in my handwriting. She watched me silent. I handed it to her. The label read, Lena, Reacquisition Protocol. She blinked. What is this? Logs? Analysis. Voice prints. Triggers. It's everything I built to monitor your safety when I couldn't trust the people around you. But it's also how I found you again. How I knew when to act. She turned the drive over in her hands. You never stopped tracking me. Not tracking, I said. Protecting. The difference is consent. She sat across from me. You're building something new? I opened another file on my screen. Adam, long-term asset strategy. Consulting firm architecture. Network layouts. Infrastructure for digital integrity systems. Not revenge. Not retribution. Just resilience. This time I said no one gets inside unless we invite them. Lena nodded. So this is the new version of us? No, I said. This is the real one. She smiled a little. I like it better. The screen dimmed behind us as the last rays of daylight disappeared into the canyon. No more hidden users. No ghosted accounts. Just 2 names. 2 files. 1 rebuilt firewall of a family. Still scarred. Still healing. But back online.